more details.
Call the Rogers TV viewer response line, email us, or connect with us on social media.
I'm Wendell Clark with a word about winning. We all know it takes a team effort in any sport and with any challenge. You can be a part of the winning team that shuts out impaired driving. Whether you're out on the town or just hanging out with friends, drink responsibly. Always have a plan for a safe ride home for yourself, your family, and your friends. You'll be helping to shut out impaired driving.
Visit ArriveAlive.org to find out more. Arrive Alive. Drive sober.
This is Rogers TV.
Hello and welcome to this special edition COVID-19 Rogers TV program dedicated to our community responses to this pandemic. My name is Carol Merton, and before I welcome our guests today, those of you who watch the program know that I do like to say a few words of thank you at the beginning of the program. So today I want to read an excerpt from a letter that actually was written by the author Alison Wines. This letter was actually shared to me by Francesca Dobbin, who is the Executive Director, United Way, Bruce and Gray. These are the excerpts. There is an invisible group of people who aren't being recognized, who are working intensely to keep the world turning, to make sure that those on the front lines have the support they need, and those at home have something to go back to when they get to the other side of this. Who are you? You're the HR teams working 80-hour weeks to start workforce planning from scratch, redeploying team members, trying to think of something, anything, to preserve jobs. You're the CEOs of charities writing new budgets so you can keep helping the world with funding that has evaporated overnight. You're accountants and bankers, restructuring finances and debt to help small businesses stay afloat. You're trade managers, negotiating frantically to get hand sanitizer and face masks into the country. You're consultants supporting clients through massive change, unsure if you'll get paid for your work when it's all over, but doing it anyway because it matters. You're hospital administrators running payroll for the nurse that just clocked 30 hours of overtime. You're communicators trying to find the words to explain a crisis the likes of which has never been seen to your organization's staff and to the community. My words to you are this: you are not invisible. Our message back to you is this: your contributions are greatly appreciated. We send to you a most heartfelt and sincere thank you for what you are doing. And on that note, I'm also extending a sincere thank you and welcome to Taylor Brown. Taylor is the funeral director, and Taylor's here to talk about funeral services and the impact on COVID-19 for those services. Taylor, thank you for joining me today.
Thank you very much for having me.
I'm wondering if you'd mind taking a few minutes to just introduce yourself a bit more. I understand that you own numerous funeral homes in the area, and you've been doing this for a little while. So maybe you wouldn't mind sharing a little bit of personal information about you.
Yes. So we own the T.A. Brown, the Breckenridge Ashcroft Funeral Home and Tannehill Funeral Home, and we also operate Huron Shores cremation in both Gray. I've been doing this now for 22 years. I've been a licensed funeral director, and I've owned funeral homes over here for the 11 years.
So we are now in a whole different way of the world with COVID-19. You must have noticed some significant changes in the whole funeral service. Tell me a little bit about how it has impacted you and also the impact on families.
Yeah, so there's certainly quite a number of things that have changed significantly. And there's some other things that are still really very similar. And funeral service is an industry, I think, that has been always quite prepared for something like this in some way. We've always had many procedures in place as far as the handling of deceased people and how to properly make sure that we're keeping ourselves safe, the community safe, and the families that we serve safe. So that part of things, we were always really well prepared for. And we've had an excellent governing body, the Bereavement Authority of Ontario, that has, prior to this pandemic, had a lot of things in place to make sure that the public was well served, and has continued to work really hard to make sure that we are all kept up to date on changes that are occurring. We've had many different webinars about what's happening in the industry, the regulations that we need to follow, and all of the funeral homes in Ontario are really following along on the same page, making sure that families and community are really are kept safe at this time, which I think is the most important thing to start with.
For sure. And it sounds like the way you are practicing in the funeral service, others are doing the same. That it's not just locally, but how you approach is I don't like to use the word standardized, but similar across other funeral homes.
Yeah, I think the across the whole province, where everybody is following along with the same procedures for transfers from hospitals and nursing homes, proper PPE, rules around gatherings at funeral homes as well. Our rules are a little bit different than the rest of the province. Other gatherings are held, and that's the maximum. Funeral homes currently have the ability to have 10 people at a time. So for a service, that might mean the minister and 9 family members are able to gather in person. And that extends to cemeteries as well. Even though there is much more space at the cemetery and it isn't an open area, we still have to adhere to that gathering at the cemetery being only. So that's certainly made things a lot more difficult for families, for people not able to say goodbye. For people aren't able to travel the same way as they were just a few to come to, their grandmother's funeral. So it's really made things much more difficult. And on top of that, a lot of these people haven't even been to their loved one while they've been ill. Whether they've passed away from COVID-19 or whether they're just, an elderly person in a nursing home or a long-term care facility that has been under lockdown for the past 6 weeks, where family haven't been able to go in and hold their hand in that. And so that's really difficult for families to not be with somebody at the end of their life.
For sure. Yeah.
I think that that's made what we do in our home and even that much more important, to allow these families to gather. And it certainly looks a lot different than it has in the past, but still giving them that opportunity to come together here at the funeral home and be able to say goodbye to their mom or dad.
So how do you get around some of that? So you're limited when the minister is there or any other officiant is present, and you say up to 9 family members can be there. So that makes a total of 10. What happens to all of the others who really want to be there? Who want to be part of it or want to support the people who are there? How do you meet their needs?
So for some families where, the family's larger than that 10, we have had staggered visitation. So the family is able to set times for people to come in, 10 at a time, no more. And we'll have 10 people come in. They'll spend their time. They'll exit the funeral home. We'll sanitize and disinfect and clean. And then have a group of the family come in. So at any one time, there's only 10 people in the building. We sanitize in between each. And that's how we've been able to allow family to come in. Those people who are able to be here, an opportunity. And then beyond that, what we've started to do is broadcast our services live. So for families that are agreeable, we will post the service to our Facebook account. And that allows for others and extended people to see and participate the family message. For people who are unable to travel, whether they're outside of the country or just the distance that's too far, it's given all of them an opportunity to be there and to be able to say goodbye.
Yeah. Do you routinely...
That's having an impact on...
Sorry, Taylor. I don't mean to interrupt. There's just a little bit of a pause sometimes in the Skyping. Technology is great, but it can be a challenge. So do you routinely video now? Is that just automatic where you do it?
So it's not automatic. We are making sure that this is something that they can do. A lot of people, families that we've talked to and that haven't even at this point that they have the options right now for visitation or service. They hear everything on television and the news, and what it's telling everybody is that they're not allowed to have a gathering, that there aren't supposed to be those interactions. It's not often that funeral service comes up so we're making sure that we inform every family as we can, and we're trying to do things like this to make sure that the public knows what the rules are specific to funerals.
Yeah.
So that they can make this for them and their family.
For sure. So in your services, and I know you called it a funeral industry, but I struggle over the word industry. But since you said the word, I guess it's safe for me to say it. It is a service that you provide to people. So often you're involved right from the point where you're contacted by the hospital or long-term care home or any other hospice to actually go and retrieve the loved one. So yeah. Has your process changed at all from how you used to do it, and maybe you can just describe and take us through that in relation to COVID-19.
Yeah, so the Bereavement Authority of Ontario has put out some very strict guidelines of how we're able to go to different locations and back here to the field. So the first our time for response. And what they've wanted to make sure is that funeral homes are responding very quickly. So we have 1 hour to respond to nursing homes and long-term care facilities. Now, that's something I think that the majority of funeral homes were already. They're really, I don't feel, delay. There's a delay for us when responding to somebody who's passed away. But they've just made sure that that's in place so that people know that they need to begin this process. Now, that has put a little bit more stress on. And I know permanent homes, other care homes in the area. At this, since the proactively sending out letters to families, making phone calls to families, and getting them to start thinking about it, whether their loved one is ill or not. Place that if they know who to call, and so that the nursing home or the long-term care has some able to and have that person brought back into the funeral home's care in a timely manner.
Right.
In addition to that, the other thing that has really changed is at hospitals and at nursing homes, we're no longer going into the building. So our funeral directors, our staff will arrive at the hospital facility in our stretch, and then in place at each hospital and each long-term care facility, who then helps to facilitate that patient's at each location and hand over our stretches, and they take it inside the building and they look after the transfer inside the building. And that just makes sure that they're on lockdown. They want as few people coming in and out of that building as possible to make sure that people are kept safe. They then bring the deceased back to us outside. We place them into our vehicle and bring them back to our home. Once we're back at the funeral home, we go through all of our standard for vehicle and all of our equipment and everything back here, and then begin to proceed with our procedures the same as we always would have.
Right. Now, I've been hearing in a variety of sectors around the shortage of PPE, and you would use personal protective equipment as well, right?
Yes.
You mentioned, masks. And are you, or has the funeral service industry had a shortage of PPEs? Have you had that experience?
Most funeral homes, I think, always had equipment and everything on hand. And there were certainly, cases where we would require more PPE than other cases. And now we're just finding that there's more cases, again, where we're regularly using it. It's a situation where certainly I think we would all like more, would like to have more on hand, and it has been a little difficult sourcing it. Part of anybody or not being able to continue to operate because they are without PPE. Mm-hmm. But I think we're certainly finding it a little difficult to source everything. but our other partners in that who regularly provide us with things certainly are working hard to make sure that we get what we need. And even if that is, partial orders of things at a time, we're making sure that things get sent out.
Right. So can you explain to me the process around social distancing? I know you've talked about numbers and you've talked about PPE, but how do you actually practice the social distancing, either for the visitation or the funeral itself?
So for people coming into the funeral home, we have been going through that first standard those standard questions about what is COVID-19, whether they have a fever or any of those other symptoms. We are just starting to put in. We will be taking his temperature who's coming into the building, whether for making arrangements or for attending the service. And that's to make sure people in the building are the minister and our staff. We want to make sure that our staff is kept safe so that for the next family, we're able to be here and make sure that things for them as well. That's number of 10 that are able to attend a service. It 10, so long as the facility has the ability to have that 6 feet of distance between people.
Yeah. Who would have thought in this day and age that when you go to a funeral home, you would get your temperature taken? I mean, when you really think about it, it's just amazing to me, and because it's just not something that people even think of, but a great way to protect everyone, actually.
It really is, and that is the concern. We want to make sure that we're not sending anybody home ill, whether that's our ministers who've agreed to come out and do services for people at this time, other members who have and our staff as well. We want to make sure that everybody at the end of the day is healthy.
Yeah. So from what you're describing, you're using a combination of things. You're still having conversations face to face with people, correct?
We are having some conversations. Some of the families that we are assisting, I don't have the ability to sit down and do funeral arrangements by FaceTime or Skype. They don't decide on their tablet. So those people we still have to get together with and sit down with face to face. So we're making sure that they feel comfortable coming into the building, that if they would like to wear a mask, PPE, we're wearing one. So we do as much of that as we possibly can, and then the social distancing within the funeral. For those families where we are able to do things electronic and do arrangements through, a phone or tablet and send items by DocuSign, then we're doing that to limit as much interaction as we possibly can.
So when you describe sending documents, so you accept electronic signature concepts for your documents? Is that what you're meaning?
Yeah, so most items here at the funeral home, we can electronic signatures. For our contracts and agreements here, for crematorium agreement, things like that are able to. One of the forms that still has to be an ink. So currently, right now, we're not to do an electronic signature for that paperwork. Now, the Bereavement Authority of Ontario is working with the provincial government to change some of that, but right now we're not not able to do that. So is able to on Lee's behalf right now.
Yeah. So a lot can be done online. I'm wondering, what is the feedback that you are getting from families as a result of this different way of doing it? I mean, it's a stressful time for anyway. Is this making it more difficult for families?
It is making it more difficult for families. It has to not be able to get together with your close friends, with your family members, and be able to say goodbye to somebody is certainly going to add to the stress. And then we see families in here where, brothers aren't able to hug at mom's, and we know how difficult that is. But as we start to change the way that we're doing things, we had a family in here and we were broadcasting their service on Facebook Live. And when we exited the building, I said to them, I know that the chapel feels really lonely and really empty. But then I mentioned to them how many people were watching the service for their mom on Facebook Live. And you could see the impact that had, knowing many other people who were taking the time out of their day to participate in their mom's funeral. And it really did mean, and it's a small thing, and it's not the way that we've been used to doing things in the past, but it has an impact.
Yes. So in other words, there may be less in one spot, but they're not alone, that there's a whole virtual audience. And I think not being alone at that time, I think even to know virtually there are people around you is important. It's very, very important. In the future, when we get through this COVID, I'm very optimistic. I just wish it was now. Do you think you'll be changing how you do your funeral services?
So I think the one thing that it's done for us is it's made better at the job we do.
Yes.
It's allowed us to take a look at the way we've been operating in the past, which I think has served families very well, and we've been doing, a really good job of things. But I think that in the future we are going to be able to, to do more for families, and that's really good.
Yeah. So I mean, certainly out of a black cloud of that COVID-19 and all of the restrictions, the potential for a silver lining is certainly there. I think what I've been hearing, I can't believe our 30 minutes is up. There's been so much information you've shared, but the important thing is for families to recognize that there is still the opportunity to have a funeral service, that although the numbers are restricted, the possibility is there, and there are additional possibilities through videos so that others can be involved as well. I certainly have found it very interesting, and I'm sure it's stressful for you as well. I want to thank you, Taylor, for being on this program. Please take care of yourself because you're providing such a critical service for our community. And thank you to our viewing audience for being here today. Please join us again to learn more about services and resources available to you during the COVID-19 pandemic. Take care and stay safe.